Hey guys, let's talk about tonight's episode of How to Get Away with Murder. And tonight we meet Annalise's mother, and she is played by Cicely Tyson. And wow, does that woman know how to make an entrance? From the second she appeared on screen, she was outstanding. Great job she did on this episode, and I hope that when Emmy time comes around and they give out these awards for those who guest star on certain shows, she wins an award. Wow. So yes, Annalise has been laid up in bed, and she has basically refused to get out of bed. And her mom arrives in town, and she's pretty much gives her the rundown, the laundry list of everything that she's doing wrong, everything that, like, who do you think you are, and all this, the house that she lives in, the white man that she dated, the man that she married, and this and that and this and that. And she is just not playing around. She is aggressive, and she is woman who speaks her mind, and it's pretty awesome. So we also, of course, had our case of the week, which we always do. And this week, Bonnie took the lead in the case. And the first thing I thought was, if I showed up at the law firm and realized that my lead lawyer was not going to be there, I'd be bouncing. So I'm glad that they addressed that right away, which was why is Annalise not taking this case. But as it turns out, they really would have wanted Bonnie to be the one to take this case because they were trying to, the hospital was trying to pull the wool over the eyes of on the defense, and he was actually in cahoots with the prosecutor. And it was a pretty decent case of the week where Bonnie got to shine and show her legal skills, because last week she did not do a very good job. So yes, of course, we found out a little bit more with Rebecca in this episode. Now, we've all known that Rebecca is a little bit shady, and you just can't quite pin down what exactly it is that West sees or saw in her. But there's been a lot of questions as of late, and they are all surrounding Rudy. And Rudy is the previous owner of the room that West lives in. And of course, we all know that there's finger marks on the wall, and it's all really weird and suspect. And he's been getting phone calls, not phone calls, but letters to the house. Like, I guess his family still thinks that he's living there. So of course this is raising a lot of red flags to West. He confronts Rebecca about it, and Rebecca acts like she doesn't really even know him. She only saw him a couple times. But then it turns out that she called the cops on him, and as a result, he ended up in a psych ward. And Wes goes to see him with Laurel, I believe. Yeah, with Laurel, and they pretend to be husband and wife so that they can get into the room. And of course, the guy's, he's not literally rocking in his seat, but he's a little loopy. He's out to lunch. He's not really answering questions. And then, of course, when they see the claw marks on the wall, which look very similar to the ones that are in the hotel room, obviously something is haunting this boy. And when Wes shows him a picture of Rebecca, he's like, do you know this girl? You know this girl, right? And then he just like starts muttering something, and he says, water or something like that. Yeah. And so, of course, this is reference to the water tank that they found Lila Stansgard, Lila, the water tank that they found Lila in, and which the whole case around Sam has been built. So, of course, this raises another big red flag for Rebecca, and even Wes starts to question, like, am I covering up for the wrong person? Are we now framing Nate for a crime that we already know that he didn't do, but that Sam didn't do, and actually Rebecca is part of? And then at the very end, we see that somebody is tracking Wes's phone, and it's Rebecca. So Rebecca knows now that Wes was at the psych ward when he lied and said that he was going to be at the library studying. So now, of course, Rebecca is in the know that Wes is questioning her, which is good because these guys have been blindly just doing whatever Wes has said, and now they're all into a whole heap of trouble. So in this episode, we also got to see Connor sort of make up with his boyfriend, who's also doing some hacking work for Annalise and her team. So that was kind of nice because I kind of like Connor and his little side piece. I think that they're actually quite cute. And then, of course, Bonnie and Asher hooked up again in this episode. And towards the end of the episode, you see Annalise go to see Nate as he's in one of the, I guess, interrogation rooms, and she slips him a piece of paper that says, like, get rid of your lawyer and call this number or something like that. So obviously she's going to do whatever she can to try to get Nate off. Because, hello, we all know that he's not guilty. But she has to kind of sell it that, she does believe that he's guilty of killing her husband. So, okay, can we just talk about Annalise's mother? Because, wow, she was amazing. And, they don't have a very good relationship, and we realize why. And because we find out that Annalise was raped as a young girl by her uncle, and she asks her mother quite angrily, did you know? Did you know about Uncle? And Cicely, but I say it like that. That's like that was her name on the show. But Annalise's mom basically, says, "Oh, pretty much stop crying over these things. Like, talking about it isn't going to change anything. He got what he deserved, and of course, Annalise isn't just going to let this go." And she says, Sam knew everything about me, and he accepted me and loved me, knowing that I was raped and everything, and Annalise's mom goes into the fact that her aunt was raped when she was by her school teacher. Her mother was raped by her pastor. She was raped by her brothers. She was like just all these repeated things. Like she was raped by her husband, and like so it was just like it's clearly an ongoing cycle that happened in their family, and is very devastating. And at the end, her mom is telling the story about about the uncle and how he would always be drunk and on the couch and smoking his cigarettes, and how he'd smoke like 3 packs a day. And at the end of the story, she reveals to Annalise that she killed her uncle, or Annalise's uncle, and that she is the one who lit up the house after she removed the kids and got them to safety. So she says this to her with her saying, I don't know what happened in the house between you and Sam, but if you did it, you were doing what you needed to do. You were protecting yourself. You were doing what had to be done. And it was like sad to hear her say that, but it was one of those things where there's been so much abuse in their family that it's almost like she doesn't know anything better than to just protect her kids. And and Annalise at one point throws it back at her because she says, "Oh, men just take, and women are the nurturers. They're the ones the loving ones. They're the ones that care." And then Annalise is like, "When have I ever been loving? When have I ever been nurturing? When have I ever been that? Obviously your definition of women is not accurate." And she even throws it back at her mom and says, when were you ever loving?" And the two of them kind of go back and forth pretty harshly in this episode, but at the end of it, her mom reveals this story to her, and they have this really great moment, and it's and she tells the story while she's like combing out her hair, and you're just watching this, and throughout this entire episode, Annalise has had her head tie on. She's been in her her bathrobe, like she's just been completely natural faced, and there's no facade. She's wrecked, and she even like gets mad at her mom for throwing away Sam's stuff. It's like this really weird emotional thing that she's going through. It's like she was very angry with Sam. She didn't trust Sam. She loves Sam, and she's covering up his murder, and then she's like, "Don't throw away his stuff. His stuff is important to me." So it's like all these weird emotions that she's going through, and I think it's again just sort of showing the flaws and the humanity that is in each person. Like it's not just black and white. There's so much gray, and I really like that. So yeah, at the end when she's sitting there in front of her mom, and her mom is like a little kid. Her mom's combing out her hair, and she's telling her the story, and then they just hug, and then it was just a really powerful scene, and I really enjoyed it. And yeah, so you get the reason why they haven't been close over the years, and why she's never come to visit her in this big fancy home that she keeps throwing in Annalise's face. And the fact that her name was Anna May and she changed it to Annalise, I thought was huge. And it just speaks volumes for who she was and who she's turned into. And, the fact that her mom probably like resents a little bit of that, and, thinks that her daughter is somebody that she doesn't recognize anymore. But Yeah. So just again, was the episode like really powerful moving forward with the main storyline? Not really, but I think there was a lot of powerful performances in this episode and a lot more character development in the story, which was in this episode, which I think is important. I think there comes a point where we have to really care about all of these characters, and we even saw Michaela, doing whatever it is that she needed to do to try to find out more information about Nate and what was happening there. Having her flirt with the lawyer and just do all these like things that what they're willing to do because they all really do feel bad that Nate is taking the fall for this. But at this point, what can they do outside of confessing to a crime that they've done? So we'll see what we find out more about this shady Rebecca. And I'm glad that things are starting to turn on her. The tide is turning a little bit because, like I said, these guys have been doing everything just blindly following her and willing to take, commit this crime for this girl that they don't even know. And Wes barely even knows. So I like that all of that sort of is coming to the top of the surface. So, yeah. All right, guys, that's my thoughts on this week's episode of How to Get Away with a Murder. Let me know what you thought, and I will see you next week. Bye bye.